One of the biggest disadvantages of privately owned churches, where the business model is like a sole proprietorship, where a person and his wife or a person by themselves are the owners of the church. They are the sole decision makers. The buck stops with them, and they are like a god in that church, that whatever decision they make, the church must follow. They call themselves the spiritual father of this household. They call themselves people who have the blueprint that God gave for the kingdom, and they are the ones who call themselves the visionary, that the ones who are given the master plan, the blueprint of that church. What happens is that in those churches, there lacks checks and balances, and more often than not, those pastors can end up making stupid decisions for which the entire church has to pay. A case in point would be what happened with the Rema Feast, where a contract was drawn worth 58 million, which was over budget by 33 million. And now there's a court case where they are being sued. They are being sued for 33 million of unpaid money. And now who's gonna pay the cost? Because the persons being sued include the church. But who made the decision? Is it not the pastor himself? So these things tend to happen where in private churches, in privately owned churches, there lacks checks and balances. There lacks people to counter. It's like a government without an opposition. You see what is happening with the government in the country right now, where it seems like the judiciary has been bought out, the entire parliament has been bought out. There is barely any opposition. Anybody who rises up is either abducted or killed, or you go missing, this guy has gone and bought out, even the former president has gone and bought out his political opposers. He's bought everybody. And so what happens is that there's a person who is acting like God. And so whatever stupid decision that person makes, everybody else has to bear the cross. And if they oppose, they either get killed or something like that. Similarly, in the churches, the same thing happens in private churches, where man of God, he goes to make financial decisions on behalf of the church without consulting or informing or involving the church. And then when things go south, the church is expected to bear the brunt of it. This thing also happened to a friend of mine, just as a case in point. A friend of mine went to a church which was a relatively new church. The church was barely 3 years old. And when they were having their second-year anniversary celebration, the pastor told the guys to actually contribute towards the anniversary and to pledge and to do all these things, and they actually contributed. My friend actually contributed 50,000, which for him was a real sacrifice. A real sacrifice. What the man of God did, he went and booked event suppliers, event services suppliers, right? People to provide red carpet, flowers, musicians, decor, and all these things. But the pastor spent overboard by 70,000 shillings. And so after the event was done, the people who had supplied had come back to him demanding to be paid. And so what does the man of God do? He goes back to the church and tells them, guys, there's a debt here that we have to pay. It is our debt. So what went wrong in the first place is that there lacked checks and balances. Ways of ensuring that this mutu, even if it's his private business, you see, the problem is this, the money that this person is spending is not his own money. He's spending the church's money. But in a sole proprietorship, there's barely any difference between the owner and the business. And there are people who don't set boundaries and differences between what is their money and what is the business's money. There are people who spend the church's money as if it is their personal money. And the worst thing is that these men of God, especially those who preach the prosperity gospel, they say, touch not the anointed. Anytime you criticize them, they say, touch not the anointed. Do my prophet no harm. Whatever he has decided, you cannot touch him because he's the anointed servant of the Lord. They defend themselves by saying that when that church was being started, that they were the ones who were given the vision and the blueprint for the church, and nobody needs to dare question them, because God will strike you with fire. God will beat you down. So what happens? The church ends up carrying burdens that are not their own. The worst case scenario is when the pastor is actually preaching the prosperity gospel, because the prosperity gospel deceives these men of God and they believe in their own lies and they teach those lies. This whole concept of you are a God, that your God is rich, that Jesus was very rich, and Jesus, actually, even how they teach the miracles of Jesus, they say that Jesus was a show-off. They say that Jesus was rich, that he went showing off and bragging, which is a lie. Jesus was the exemplification of humility, even washing people's feet, riding on a donkey when golden chariots were available. Jesus is the exemplification of, but they lie about Jesus. And so they also believe in their own lies. And in the process, they deceive themselves into believing that they're supposed to look like the kingdom they represent. And so in the process of trying to attain that materialistic glory, the red carpet, the flowers, the lights, the beauty, the glory, many churches today are so modernized to the extent of looking like the world. Today, you can hardly tell the difference between a church and a nightclub. They all put black background, put a disco light. They look the same. They're seeking materialistic earthly glory. And who is going to foot that bill? It is you, the members. When they are going to commit the church's money towards paying for expensive carpet and tents and chairs, and they are going to get expensive flowers, go get the most grand of cake because they're trying to create an illusion of the glory of God on the earth. Who is footing that bill? Is it not you? So you yourself, you're sacrificing. For example, if in a month you make X amount, 10% of that you're giving it towards the work of the Lord. But is the tent and the chair and the flowers, is that the work of the Lord? Did Jesus die for us to create a manifestation of the earthly glory? What was the work of the ministry? In the Great Commission, Jesus said, go into all the world. Teaching. What if this 58 million that was spent for apparently tents and chairs and flowers at Rema Feast, what if it went to empower people with Bibles and books, Christian study Bibles, things that actually do the work of the ministry, the work of teaching? What if they went to create teaching programs that teach people, that disciple people, because that is the work of the ministry? What if it was put into evangelism programs? What if it was put into works of charity, because Jesus actually fed the hungry? Jesus went to the place where sick people were, the pool of Bethesda. What if churches actually sent out missionaries into hospitals to preach messages of hope and of peace? What if they went to the widows and the orphans and the destitutes and the people who do not have jobs, create systems for them to have jobs? But no, this money is being spent for flowers, for cake, for screen, for lights, for glory, for big cars, for entourage, for VIP section. The Rema Feast had a very huge tent for VIP section. VIP section in the church, VIP section. But anyway, those are the things that happen. And who is supposed to carry that cross? It is you, the congregant. And so the words of Jesus in Matthew 23 come alive. Jesus in Matthew 23 was speaking to the scribes and the religious leaders of that time because they were doing the exact same thing. They were placing heavy and impossible burdens on people. We do understand the political and economic climate in this country, about how we've been brought to our knees financially, even through COVID. We know how people don't have jobs. We know how people are suffering to make ends meet. We know that it is January and people are supposed to pay school fees and still pay their bills. And then here comes the church asking you to remove money for flowers and for carpet and for tent. Does that make sense? And it goes back to you, the congregant. When you put money in the basket, do you also expect an account for how that money gets spent? When you donate to a certain ministry, do you also get back a report of what was spent in that ministry? We barely ask those questions because we've been properly programmed into touch not the anointed and do my prophets no harm. And so this man of God, they've come, these private churches, they become very rich very quickly. And so the monies that we are giving is not doing the work of the ministry. It's not doing the work of the gospel. It's not doing the work of the kingdom. It's doing the work of stroking a man's ego and making him feel like, oh, I've made it in life. That's what this money is being spent for. I have here with me a women's study Bible, which I have available for you. It's available for sale. In the book of Titus, it has an entire 3 pages describing, it has a table describing what is required of pastors, okay? And that's from the book of Titus, from chapter 1 to chapter 3. The entire book of Titus talks about a sound church, a sound pastor. And women particularly are the most affected by Christian cults. And so that's why I'm selling for you this Bible study. You can get a copy of this. Just WhatsApp me through the number on my bio. But there's an entire 3 pages that talks about the requirements for a pastor. It explains what the Bible actually means when it says that a man of God should be blameless. Okay, should not have court cases, should not be quick-tempered, should not be self-willed, should not be a lover of money, should be sober-minded. What sobriety is there in spending 58 million for flowers, tents, and decor, and then coming back to charge the church for that expense when they were not involved in that decision in the first place?